Well, we're going to get more now on the mutual security pacts that Britain has signed with Sweden and Finland. The deal pledge supports from the UK should they come under attack. They also guarantee more intelligence sharing, joint military exercises and closer ties to combat cyber attacks. Both Sweden and Finland are considering whether to join NATO in the face of warnings from Russia not to abandon their traditional neutral stance. Well, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Kristine Berzina, head of the geopolitics team at the German Marshall Fund of the US. Many thanks for joining us here on BBC News this evening. We know it's going to take some time should both countries press ahead with joining NATO. From the moment of signing up to the moment of actually becoming members could be some time. What was agreed today? Was that the UK offering protection in that kind of no man's land period?
I would see what the Prime Minister did today as an extension of the cooperation that the UK already has with Sweden and with Finland and much of Northern Europe on defence. Yes, it provides assurances more explicitly than has been stated before. Yes, that's going to fill a gap between if and when Sweden and Finland say, yes, we would like to join NATO, when there's a general, that seems like a good idea from NATO leaders. There's a while before all the parliaments across NATO countries approve of that and ratify their entry into NATO. And so it provides a bit of a stopgap potentially for that period. But this really isn't coming out of nowhere, given the very long-standing cooperation and leadership the UK has shown in Northern European security, including with Sweden and Finland, apart from this entire NATO bid.
How worried should both countries, and indeed NATO and Europe, be worried about Russian threats of repercussions if this goes ahead? I mean, have they attacked Ukraine because it's not in NATO and left NATO countries alone? Because the reality is they don't want a world war just as much as we don't.
Ukraine is a special case for Russia, a feeling of something that is very much its own, and the idea that Ukraine would have the gall of trying to be fully European and not within Russia's orbit. That's a personal thing in many ways for President Putin, for the Kremlin. The fact that Sweden and Finland would consider joining NATO, this is not popular with the Kremlin either. The Kremlin has used threatening language against this, but it really is a different case. Yes, Russia is going to try to flex its muscles during this time, but I don't think we should be too worried about military incursions or military threats against Finland or Sweden. You can't rule anything out, of course, but that doesn't seem the likeliest scenario right now. It's much more likely that we could see hybrid attacks of the kind of the cyberspace and information operations rather than something involving troops in these countries.
Might we not see, though, some redeployment of Russian military artillery around its borders and pointing at European countries?
Kaliningrad is right across the sea from Sweden. Gotland is a Swedish island rather close. St. Petersburg next to Helsinki. When you look on a map, those are very close. Finland has an 800-mile border with Russia. Russia is there, and Russia has been there with its missiles, with its nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad, close to Europe this entire time. Yes, Russia is talking about this more right now, but it has been there, and Russia has been upgrading and updating all of this already facing Europe, especially since 2014, since the Crimean operation and the activities in the Donbas. So yes, there's much more talk about it right now, but in practice, all of this has been happening and has been there. It's not something new that Russia would be doing now.
I mean, we were just looking at a map of how NATO is growing there while you were talking, and it is growing. And yeah, as you touched on earlier, there is a history with Ukraine and Russia, which is partly the reason why he's decided to conduct this invasion. But it is about NATO. It's mainly about NATO as it grows. So when Boris Johnson says security in Europe has now changed, what does that look like to the best of your expertise?
Security in Europe has changed would mean that Sweden and Finland are not going to be standing in the middle of something anymore, but in practice, they really haven't been. We're making explicit things that have been implicit or quiet for a long time. Sweden and Finland have been in very close cooperation and partnership with NATO for a number of years. Their past sense of neutrality really has gone out the window since they joined the EU in the 90s. This is a codification in many ways of processes that have been started and now are accelerated because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So again, I don't think this is a switch in the direction that these northern countries have been going or in the threat that Russia poses in Northern Europe. It is there in the middle of NATO between Lithuania and Poland with nuclear weapons, and it has been. We simply don't like to look at it very much. Having Finland and Sweden there and their very significant military capabilities officially on NATO's side actually could help in terms of addressing the threat that has been there, and now we're going to talk about more moving forward.
Fascinating, Kristine, if not a little worrying as well. But thank you very much for your analysis and insight there, Kristine Berzina from the German Marshall Fund of the US.